Where can I go from your presence? You know, where they ascend into the heavens or I make my bed in hell, the Bible says you're there. God's there. His presence is there. It was 1974. I had left a note in one of my drawers at home from my mother just saying that I was leaving. Didn't have the heart to tell her face to face. My father had been killed in a car accident a few months previously, and I was mad. I was saying, God, I don't get this. He was 51, I was 16. I asked the Lord, you know, why? And it didn't matter. I was mad. I waved my fist at God and said, I'm not interested in serving you. And went down and joined the CNR in Toronto. Then they sent us to London where we did some training, and then I was stationed here in Thamesville. I was bitter. I became hard about this, and thus packed up, you know, ended up here in Thamesville, sleeping in a bunk car just down the road, and we'd spend most of our evenings here and spending my $4.50 an hour just drinking draft beer and smoking and just carrying on, and you know, I'd lied about my age, told them I was 18, CNR hired me, so here we were. I'm standing beside the side track where I was here in 1974. Main track is in behind me, and they still run a train early morning. And this is where we were. There were 3 boxcars. There was one that we slept in, and one that we ate in, and one where our supplies were. And so I would get my sledgehammer and drive nail all day and work these lines for $4.50 an hour, and then go back up to the Legion and drink it. And so here we were. And so I would sleep in this bunk car, first bed by the door. Not sure why I wanted that, but my bed was 5'8", I was 6'2". Potbelly stove was at the end of my bed, and so I would sleep with my work boots on because the lads would cook the stove just to irritate me and smolder my socks, so to speak. And so I would sleep with my work boots on, which meant I was ready to go to work early the most. But it wasn't much. So we had the bunk car, we had the cook car and the supply car here in Thamesville, and yet God knew where I was. I don't know how many weeks went by. I have really no track or landmarks of time back then, and I came strolling out of the bar about 10:30 on a weeknight, and there stood my brother-in-law looking at me outside the door, and I had a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other hand, and then he said these dreaded words to me that no runaway, you know, wants to hear, and that was that your mother's here and she wants to see you. And I was like, you know, I swallowed the cigarette and dropped the beer, and there she was. I could see her car just parked a block down the road. Her little Chevy 2-door. She was way cool before her time, and I remember walking that block thinking, oh my, what am I going to do here? I could see her sitting in the front seat, head down. I'm sure she was praying and crying. And I walked into that vehicle and sat with her. She took me by the hand and Chuck, you know, I know you're hurting, Charles, you're hurting. We're going to make it. I'm hurting too. She wanted to pray with me, and I'm sure we did that. But on the outside, I was hard. I was mad. I didn't understand why Dad had to die at 51 and I'm 16. I didn't get that. It just wasn't supposed to be. But she asked me to come home that weekend, but I wouldn't do it. So she gave me some dollars, and of course I would go back in the bar and drink it away, or the Legion. And I remember sticking my head back in the door just as she was saying goodbye, and I was done. I wanted to get out really fast. And I said to her, Mom, how did you find me? And she said, well, Charles, I've been praying for weeks now, and I felt God speak to me and say, get in the vehicle and I will take you to your son. And so living in the west end of Toronto to here in Thamesville, it's well over 200 kilometers, and she drove with my brother-in-law with a GPS called the Holy Spirit, and literally parked the car 1 block from where I walked out of this Legion about 5 or 6 minutes later. So I want to encourage you today that wherever your son is, wherever your daughter is, wherever your brother is, wherever your sister is, that God knows, and God has a plan for their life. I wish I could tell you that night I threw up my hands and cried out to God. I didn't. It was a journey, and I was just mad. And so I just ask, you know, for your heart today, for those that are listening and watching this, that you would just keep that door open and keep the light on, as my mother did. But I just want to encourage you today that if God could find me in Thamesville, in a town back then of not even 1,000 people, that God can find your son, your daughter, and knows where they are. And so I really, my heart cry today is to really encourage you that no matter what's happening in your family, that God has a plan that's bigger than captivity. God has a plan that's bigger than bondage. Remember the verse, Psalm 139, verse 7, where can I go? Where in the world can I go from your presence? If I ascend to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. So be encouraged today. God's not done yet.